Hey, Howard Jacobson here. So in a recent video, I talked about the language of should and have to versus the language of get to and want to, and how talking about should and have to and must and needs and all those obligation words tend to create friction and drag on our actions that make us a little bit in conflict. Last night, I was rereading Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg, and his treatment of should and have to and language of that type adds a whole new dimension to what I was talking and thinking about. Let me read a little bit of it to you now. Denial of responsibility. That's what he calls this type of language, denial of responsibility. So that caught my eye right away. Another kind of life-alienating communication, so this is in a chapter about all the ways in which we use language to alienate ourselves from life instead of fully participating, is denial of responsibility. Communication is life-alienating when it clouds our awareness that we are each responsible for our own thoughts, feelings, and actions. The use of the common expression have to, as in there are some things you have to do whether you like it or not, illustrates how personal responsibility for our actions can be obscured in speech. So he goes on to talk about lots of different ways in which we deny responsibility for ourselves, including the phrase, you make me feel, like you make me feel guilty, you make me feel angry. He talks about the book Eichmann in Jerusalem, in which Hannah Arendt describes the language used by the Nazi bureaucrats and officials to commit their horrendous crimes, and they called it Amtssprache, office speak, where it was all sort of passive voice, denial of responsibility. So you can see this stuff goes far beyond, am I going to jog this morning? It really goes to the core of who we think we are and what kind of agency we have in this world. So I just want to read one little bit more here. I've got to scroll a few pages down. So it's talking about where this language comes from. And he's talking in general about all the ways in which we use communication to hurt and to separate rather than to be compassionate and to connect. So here's what he says. Life-alienating communication both stems from and supports hierarchical or domination societies where large populations are controlled by a small number of individuals to those individuals' own benefit. It would be in the interest of kings, czars, nobles, and so forth that the masses be educated in a way that renders them slave-like in mentality. The language of wrongness, should, and have to is perfectly suited for this purpose. The more people are trained to think in moralistic judgments that imply wrongness or badness, the more they are being trained to look outside themselves to outside authorities for the definition of what constitutes right, wrong, good, or bad. Wow. So if you're an entrepreneur in spirit, whether you work for yourself or you work for a small business or you work for a company or you don't work at all and you just do things in the world because that's who you are and that's how you flow, this concept of responsibility, of using a language, I ought to, I have to, I need to, really is an enslaved mentality that's been ingrained in us. Goodness knows it's been ingrained in us by teachers, parents, culture, church, everything that seeks to keep us subservient. But what we're looking for is not just agency over our habits. It's not just, I want to get more done, I want to manage my time better, I want to accomplish something. Those are the fruits, but the tree we want to plant and the roots that go down deep is the roots of responsibility and freedom and liberation. We may not feel externally enslaved, but as long as the language that we're using is that of the oppressor, that of someone trying to keep us fit into a neat little box, looking outward for right and wrong, appropriate and inappropriate, then that use of language is an indication and a reinforcement of that box that we're in. So really, this is an invitation to liberation. And you thought, and I thought, it was just about getting more stuff done. But as you can see, these fruits are indicative of a very rich and vibrant tree when we can tap into the fullness of our connection with this universe. So that's all for me, Howard Jacobson. Talk to you next time.